Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, and welcome to today's Art of Procurement interview, powered by SIG, and I'm your host, Philip Eidson. And today's show is part of a mini-series of 6 different episodes that I recorded all live at the recent SIG Fall Summit. And this being a live recording, you'll be sure to hear some background noises from baristas making coffee to venue employees taping wire to the carpet. Lots of different little noises in between. We actually had a booth set up in the main corridor of the conference venue, so you're sure to get the atmosphere from the event from those interviews. And so for this mini-series, I'm actually going to jump straight into the conversation. You'll hear me introduce the guest as we get going with the conversation. So with that being said, let's roll the tape. Welcome to this episode of the Art of Procurement. I'm joined here at the SIG Fall Summit in Carlsbad by Chandar Pattabhiram. I think as we said, people like Pele and Bono go by their first name. We'll just go with Chandar. I think that's easier for me to pronounce. Welcome to the show,
Thank you,
Chandar.
Philip. Thank you for the rock star introduction, by the way. I appreciate that.
No, I really appreciate you joining me. And you're pretty recent to the procurement function. What inspired you or motivated you to jump into this world that we all inhibit?
It's a great question. I've been with Coupa as Chief Marketing Officer for about 5 weeks now. Mm-hmm. Before that, I was Chief Marketing Officer for a company called Marketo, which was the leader in the digital marketing domain, and been in other companies before that. But really, when I looked at it, when I left Marketo and when I looked at the spectrum, I felt that there's 2 kinds of companies that are relevant today, and companies that are directly associated with money. Yeah. And in companies that are directly associated with how you make revenue, how you earn money, and two is how you spend money. Yeah. And those are very discretionary. Those are very mandatory companies as opposed to discretionary spend. And as a result, I felt that just like Marketo was very much on the revenue cycle, Coupa is intrinsic to how you spend money and tracking all aspects of spend management. Yeah. And I felt that category was ripe for growth and disrupting the traditional technologies in this space. So that's excited me a lot, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I think it's only been a few weeks since you joined, right?
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks.
Okay. What's your first impressions?
Yeah, I think it's good. It's really good. I'm impressed with. I'm at this conference, my first conference in the industry. Impressed with the number of brands here. Great companies here talking about all their success stories and some really tangible metrics. And we at Coupa pride ourselves in this whole concept of value as a service, but it's about tangible value and metrics. I see a lot of great brands today. We had Capital One, for example, talking about specific metrics for them. Yeah. We see a number of other great brands here talking about their metrics. So that's interesting for me. The other aspect that is that there seems to be this mindset of we need to take procurement sourcing from yesterday's procurement to tomorrow's procurement, going from a tactical function into a strategic function. There seems to be a mindset, and then we just need a playbook to go make that happen, and that seems to be there today.
No, I think that, and that's maybe synonymous with events like this as well, where really people who either are leading that change or want to be part of that change really here to learn a little bit more about what others are doing and kind of get inspiration from others, because there is that move, and I see it in more and more organizations that are wanting to take not just the journey from tactical to strategic, but then how do we actually break down the barriers of what we thought were possible before?
Totally.
Because there's a wall that we kind of set ourselves up and say business partnering is everything we want to be, but there's actually something beyond that around innovation and supply markets and things that we can bring even more value. So it's kind of seeing what the art of the possible is even.
Totally right. Totally.
As I'm interested with your experience from your marketing side, with your marketing hat on. As a CMO, you've obviously interacted with procurement in your past, and not necessarily asking you to name names, but as a stakeholder, perhaps what are some of the things that you look to procurement to do for you as a marketing stakeholder, but also maybe some of the things that we could improve on?
No, I think I'll talk about 2 aspects of it. Maybe I'll talk about how does procurement elevate itself into an organization? That's kind of one part of it. And two is how does procurement help marketing and do better in those two aspects of it, right? So if we kind of thin slices and talk about the first part of it, going back to the point we just made about going from tactical to strategic procurement from a marketing perspective is you think of everything as a brand, right? And think of everything as a product. Like, just like Apple takes iPhones to market, Coupa takes their product, spend management, cloud platform to market. Think of every procurement executive looking at it saying, I'm going to take my procurement function internally to market as a product, and think of it from that mindset. So you're thinking about how do I market it internally, and how do I start talking about the value of it as opposed to all the activities. It's one thing to say that I saved money, which a lot of people talk about, but talk about more strategic value of procurement in terms of driving agility to the organization, driving competitive advantage to the organization, and then driving the visibility spend, the visibility, compliance, control, all those pieces that come along with that a CFO cares about as much as saving money, which a procurement person cares about, right? So procurement as a brand, I would say think of it as a product and say how do you take it to market and have that mindset that you are the brand owner of this product, and how do I start talking about the value as opposed to what we do, right? I have this saying that people buy candles not because they like candles, because they want light. It's about the value. So that's on one side of it.
So if I could just ask before you talk about marketing specifically, what are some of the pillars or some of the building blocks, foundational pieces, if you will, that a CPO listening to this could actually put in place to start building a brand or to start thinking about their positioning or to think of their stakeholders as a community or a tribe that actually want to be involved in what you're doing?
This question.
That's what you're doing on the outside when you're doing,
Totally. And like in any brand, as a marketer, you look at and what's your brand promise and your mission statement. So I would look at every CPO and say, as my function, for example, I was talking to the CPO of PF Chang's, right? Very strategic, great guy, and the company's, awesome Coupa customer. And the question is, how do I look at that and treat it as what's my mission statement, what's my brand promise internally to my customers and stakeholders, and drive, and what are the set of metrics I'm going to measure myself for strategic success, as opposed to just using the traditional success, okay, I'm just save money, et cetera, right? So that is the foundational fabric for me to say, define your internal brand promise, define the big strategic metrics for success, and find joint wingman with this, be a joint wingman or wing person with the CFO to say what are the metrics that a CFO cares about and closely align with that would be, I would say, as a starting point of how do you establish your internal brand or product within the company.
And so onto the marketing side of things, as a stakeholder, what are some of the things that we could do to help you, or what somebody who's listening again who is trying to build a relationship with their marketing stakeholders to help them manage their marketing spend? What are some of the things that they can do?
Yeah, the two aspects for me is agility and visibility, right? Some of the traditional technologies I've used, I was at IBM and other companies before that for whether it's doing purchase requisitions or whether it's doing, all the purchase to pay or all the procure to pay processes. The agility has not been there, and one of some of the newer technologies, for example, Coupa, that excited me, and I'd used Coupa at Marketo, was the agility. And when I say agility, it is, as my Rob Bernstein, the CEO of Coupa, has a great line which says that the best UI is no UI, which means bring information to the point of action that you already are in. It's like if I'm using email as my primary system of workflow approval collaboration, bring that here.
Don't force somebody into another tool.
Don't force somebody into that. So that gives me the agility. I could be sitting here in this SIG conference right here, and I have a purchase requisition approval on my email. I hit a button and I'm done, right? Rather than logging into some portal or something like that. So that agility piece is important for me. And the second is the visibility. The CMO was saying, I really want to quickly look at the fact that what percentage of spend is under management for me, how is it sliced, how is it diced, and who's not spending in my department. That's as important for me, that money is going to get wasted in a budget. And having that trackability, I felt that I would selfishly say as a user of Coupa before than a marketer of Coupa, that was those things that the agility and the visibility was very beneficial for me.
As a CMO, and this is probably a very broad sweeping statement, but did you really care about saving money particularly? Or was it, what other objectives did you have that we as a procurement enabling function for you, or a service or a product? We talked about procurement being a product. what could we focus on that helps you do your job better?
Yeah, I think, saving money is a good thing. First of all, old saying, a dollar saved is a dollar earned, right? So let's not,
you have to be responsible.
You have to be responsible for it, right? That's important. But, in the Maslow's hierarchy of importance there for a CMO, it's kind of on the lower side of it, right? And that's why even at Coupa, we don't talk about, saving money as a primary brand promise. Yes, we have a number of companies saving money, and we talk about maximizing the value of every dollar spent in an organization, right? An organization spends. Yeah. Saving is one, but it's not taking $1 and making it 60 cents. It's taking $1 and saying, can I buy $1.50 worth of value for that same dollar? So thinking about that is one thing, strategically thinking. And then going back to what's important for me as a CMO is ultimately, marketers in any organization care about competitive advantage and how do you beat the competition, how do you win, and how do you drive efficiencies in such a way that you're agile as an organization to beat competition. So creating processes and making sure that those processes are very agile and correlating spend management ultimately with indirectly driving advantage to an organization is something that a marketer would value over time.
A final question, because I know we've got to start to wrap up just by the nature of the other sessions that we have here at the event today. I'd love to know what excites you about where procurement is going, as you've been kind of getting yourself immersed in what procurement, the direction that we're going and perhaps some of the opportunities that exist for us as a function.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting question. If I Google Earth it, as I like to say, kind of look at it on the top, I think the concept of smarter software driven through tribal intelligence and tribal patterns is something that is very interesting and exciting to me. Specifically, for example, if we take Coupa, it's one thing to have intelligence of the software at a specific application level, whether you're using a procurement or an invoicing or an expenses application. It's also another thing to have intelligence at a suite level, but meaning across the intelligence, having intelligence to tell users what to do proactively at a combined suite level. But the most important thing is, can you leverage at a tribal community level, right? And that to me is a game changer as in software, especially when I take Coupa as a manifestation of that, is using tribal intelligence and patterns to give, to be prescriptive to our users on the best course of action to take. In other words, you're taking the collective wisdom of the community to drive the best courses of action. I will tell you, for us, for example, we have $550 billion worth of spend going through our system. So how do you take the collective wisdom of all the hundreds and hundreds of companies in that spend and provide prescriptive intelligence to users across a set of activities, whether I'm sourcing suppliers, whether I'm approving invoices, whether I'm doing the right requisitions, etc. But bringing that intelligence into the function based on community, I feel is where the excitement is. And I feel that's really, tribal patterns and tribal intelligence is something that can be very, very efficient and game changer for us.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting as somebody who's been in the profession for a number of years, probably more than I would like to admit. The idea of community is something that really, and the benefit of community, whether that's from a knowledge share perspective, whether it's from an information gathering and aggregation of data, and as you say, kind of pattern recognition, all those things where we start to collect all of the knowledge that exists across everything that all of our organizations are doing today to make us more powerful.
Oh, totally.
It's something that's just going to be so interesting.
I remember the movie Minority Reports, right? The kind of, I don't know if it's the Steven Spielberg movie where you predict the crime before it happens.
Right.
It's kind of the same kind of thing, is that if somebody, that there's some expense report something is going to happen, and that be proactive about it, be prescriptive about it, but use the community intelligence as the data input to driving those strategic heuristic decisions. It's the right thing.
Well, Chandar, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this short pod here at the SIG Summit. What I'm going to do is I will link up to the Coupa website, also to your LinkedIn profile, so that if listeners want to kind of continue the conversation and learn a little bit more about you, they can do that. Those will be at the show notes for today's episode. That's going to be at artofprocurement.com/Chandar. That's artofprocurement.com/Chandar. So thank you very much.
Philip, it's a pleasure, and have a wonderful day and enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Procurement. To find an archive of all past episodes, you can go to artofprocurement.com/episodes. And to ensure you never miss another show, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe.